And I will hand the mic over to you two to tell us all about what a great investor to founder relationship looks like, sounds like, feels like, and how it works.
Love it. Leslie, you go first.
Well, hello. It's good to see you. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm tired. I'm tired. How are you doing?
Same. We had a 4-year-old crawl into our bed this morning at 3 a.m. So I'm also tired.
Yeah. Erin and I are both moms, and we have bonded over doing this while raising humans, building companies while raising humans and raising funds.
Yeah.
Okay. So Rory already introduced us, and we're going to try to do like a two-way interview here. So hopefully it's not, and you see that I like highlighted each of our questions. So why don't we start with, let's tell people about your company and the round that you raised back in the spring. So just give us like the numbers of like, how much were you aiming for? How much did you raise? And like, what was your pipeline like? How many investors did you meet and that type of thing?
Okay, sure. Okay, so quick background on PairTree. So, and a little bit on me to get to the background on PairTree. So thank you, Rory, for that introduction. But the part that you left out is my path to parenting. So I ran an agency in Seattle for almost 15 years. And when I was running that agency, I was just delaying this idea of getting pregnant. I was like, later. And until the point I was like, okay, we're ready. And it was too late for my eggs. We couldn't get pregnant. And so after a year of trying, we went through a bunch of 3 years and almost $100,000 worth of IVF, reproductive technology. And after my third miscarriage, I was like, I'm done. I just can't do this anymore. I'm broken financially, physically, emotionally. And so we decided to move to adoption, which we'd always said we were interested in. And I thought it was going to be easier. And we got there and I was like, what is this space? This is awful. It's $40,000 to $60,000 to adopt an infant in the US, and it takes on average 2 years. And I was like, I can't do this. So long story short, we found a route different than the conventional route of using an adoption agency. And it uses technology, and it's basically like building an online profile similar to online dating. And within a month of building a profile online, we were in a hospital room in Michigan holding our son. And then 3 years later, we did the same thing. And this time it took 4 months instead of 1 month, but we were in a hospital room in Houston holding our daughter. And so that was kind of the like aha moment with PairTree, I think, for me, that like, oh my gosh, this is an industry that's been untouched by technology and is in desperate need of it. And so I started my first kind of foyer into venture capital was I had this idea, I had a pitch deck. And I had a bunch of meetings set for March of 2020. And we all know what happened then. So all my meetings got canceled and I was like, well, I guess I'll build a prototype. And so I built the MVP and I was like, I'll prove traction first. I'll get some traction. And then when the world comes back to whatever state normal is, I'll talk to venture capitalists. And so realizing that I was building traction and the world wasn't coming back to normal, I decided to enter an accelerator, went into Techstars. And they kind of helped shape the way that we were going to move forward in terms of talking to investors. And so the goal of raising after Techstars was to raise 1.8 million. And that was hopefully going to make us 18 months. We ended up oversubscribing a little bit. We raised 2.2. And that closed in July, this last July. So we've only had money for about 4 months.
So, and you were very good at pitching from day one. And so you probably had really good numbers, but I've never asked you this, like, how many investors did you meet with?
About 62.
62.
Yeah.
Pitch meetings.
62 different meetings. Yeah. And actually I'd kind of planned on 100 because I'd heard this random fact that female founders have to talk to 100 meetings before you get yeses to the round. So I was kind of planning on 100, but we were good at 62.
And then out of those, how many, do you have any sense of like, what was your batting average? Like how many said yes, how many said no?
All right, I'm bad at fractions, but we have 12 investors and I talked to 62 people. So if somebody could do that there.
But you were oversubscribed. Like, there were investors who wanted to come in who did not come in.
We had to say no to a lot of people. Yeah.
So that was a good round. It
Yes.
was a good round.
Oh my gosh, I was thrilled. I will tell everybody I did get shingles through it. So
You
it's
did?
I did. Yes. It is not, it wasn't without stress, but I think it was a lot of stress that like founders put a lot of stress on themselves.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of stress because I had people working for me that I was like, hey, I can pay you once we close around. And so like, the pressure of like employees that are choosing your vision over a paycheck comes with a lot of pressure. And so put a lot of pressure on me raising.
So you and I met through, we officially met through Techstars because I'm a mentor for the program.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people in common. So there's like a lot of pre-existing social proof. So now I'm going to ask you the question that is sort of like when you end up like in a relationship with someone and then you're like, oh, what did you think of me when we first met?
Yeah.
So like,
Why did you marry me?
You pick me? Yeah. Why did you let me into this oversubscribed round? Tell everybody all the good things. Just kidding.
Yeah. Well, so I think, so in talking to all the investors, I think it was pretty clear early on who just got it right away. And you got it right away. Like I think we were doing kind of like a 5-minute preamble in our investor meetings just to tell people who we were and our vision. And you started asking questions immediately that are in our roadmap, like 4 years down the road. Like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And I was like, okay, yeah, she gets it. Like she sees the vision that we see. And I think for anybody that is pitching an idea, that's important, that we have kind of shared tracks in terms of thinking. But then I think the other thing is, this is kind of twofold, is just that you are so focused on female founders and changing what the world looks like and the expectations around female founders, which is a little bit scary because you have this unwavering dedication to making sure that female founders are seen differently in society and by themselves in terms of what we're capable of. And so it's a little bit intimidating in terms of living up to the expectations of Leslie. But it's also like hugely motivating to know that somebody thinks they see that in you, that you're capable of that kind of thing. So I think I was equally scared and motivated by you.
Yeah. I remember having a conversation with you where you were like, you were kind of talking a little bit about your fears and like, I don't know what this is. And I just remember like, at some point I went from being that founder to kind of meeting with hundreds, if not thousands of founders. And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, why not you? You're just as good as all those guys. Like, why not you? I remember telling you those words, like, why not you? Why not you in the NASDAQ, right?
I remember you saying that too. So do you see, like, is there pattern recognition that you see in founders that you want to invest in that may not even see it themselves, or?
Oh man, what a great question. It's a dirty word, but I think that there's an ambition, and founders that are unapologetic about their ambition, and it doesn't always manifest as I want to be a gazillionaire, right? Like it doesn't manifest that coldly with most of the women that I meet, and sometimes it doesn't. That's great, right? Like, you know, that's gender equity. You know what I mean? Like we should be able to just want to be rich. But a lot of times it just manifests as like, either I have to solve this problem. Like nobody's solving, like I need to solve this problem, right? And they're super, super, super focused on that. Or it manifests as I want to grow a company and I've tried a few different problems. I think my pattern matching is around people who are like, they don't sort of feel like they are victims of the system that is really hard, right? Like we could very easily feel like victims of the numbers and of the system.
Yeah.
But I generally pattern match to founders who are like, yeah, that sucks. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going. You know, like, what are you gonna do? Like they don't get bitter. They just kind of keep going.
Yeah.
And I pattern match to, for me, and this is one of our like values as a firm and as a team, like, and even as like humans, that like my team have this shared value around like substance over hype. And if you've ever gotten an email from any one of us, like we all have like, we value substance over hype. And in a system that, you know, like venture capital is so full of hype, right? Like it's so full of like making yourself look bigger than you are, which is, you know, a really important skill to like, you know, to like marketing is a really important skill, but there's a fine line there. And I tend to pattern match to founders who don't BS me. Like I would much rather have your honesty. I would much rather like be able to sort of hear the ugly and like coach and take coaching and like be able to be there for you. It's sort of like parenting, you know how like you want your kids to come to you with the ugly problems.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you don't want to be surprised by the time they're in jail. Like you want to like be, I don't know, my 5-year-old is not going to be in jail. I don't know why, but poor Dora, I'm just like projecting bad things for her. But you want to be able to like have those conversations before. So there's something to like the honesty of the relationship that either you have it or you don't. And those are kind of some of the things that I look for, which I realize are really hard to like, it's not a checklist, you know what I mean?
I know, but it's chemistry. And I think it's really important because that is what I tell founders to look for when they're looking for investors is chemistry matters in terms of just because, especially early stage, like we are, that there's so many ups and downs in this particular stage that you need to have someone that is just, you know, like the VC hype thing is great. You need people that are smart, that have money and have seen these things before so they can kind of help navigate your path. But somebody that you can call when you're like, our revenue just dropped 20% and we don't know why. Or I need to fire somebody for the first time and I don't know how to do it. That just random things that you're going to have questions about. Introductions for like, hey, there was this huge new opportunity here that we can see it, but we just don't know how to get to it yet. That you can call and just talk normally about, because you don't have time as a startup founder to be putting on airs. Like there's just all those things are stripped away. So it's just like brass tacks. I need help here, or you know, lead me this way, introduce me to this person. And so if you don't have that kind of direct relationship where you can talk without filter, then it's going to be a problem, I think. Or it's going to put more pressure on yourself and it just kind of counteract itself.
As you were talking, describing that like putting your best face forward, but also letting that face be like the ugly cry face, right? Like it's so funny because with women, so much of what we need to do is project confidence. And I think that like early in my journey, and I see this with other women as well, whether early meaning young or kind of at the start of a big learning curve, right? Like in the early days of a new learning curve, you're sort of like putting on the clothes of the role that you want to be playing. You're sort of acting a little bit and trying to fill those shoes. And the problem is like, I tend to think that like real confidence is when you don't have to do that, right? Like when you're able to like put on the sneakers and just go and be yourself and like kind of get to that level. And it's for me, like one of the things that I liked about you was that, right? Like I felt like you're transparent, like, you know, you're transparent, you're ambitious, you have values that like, I feel like I can trust you, right? Like all of those things really felt like there was good chemistry in the beginning.
And I'm doing really good at selling myself because I have to like stuff the imposter syndrome down every day.
Yeah, don't we all?
Yeah.
Don't we all though?
For sure.
Is there anything that you would do differently in that first fundraise, kind of knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I would have spent more time. I think I spent time with investors that weren't right for us. And so I think, and I tried to whittle it down. So again, like developing that investor pipeline early and starting investor communications early is something else I always recommend founders do. Because going through Techstars, so we graduated from Techstars in April. I gave myself 2 months that I was like, I'm going to full-time dedicate myself to fundraising for 2 months. And then if I didn't do it in 2 months, I was going to have to figure out how to do it because it takes a lot of time to do it the right way. And doing it the right way is, again, like you're trying to marry somebody. And so you want to make sure that they're at the right, you know, they're the right stage for you, they're the right industry for you. And then, you know, from a culture or chemistry fit that you have that too. And that takes time. And one meeting mushrooms into 3 or 4 meetings. And so if it's going well. And so I think I spent time with people that like the check sizes, a 20-minute call is a 20-minute call. And if you're spending 20 minutes with somebody that's going to write a $25,000 check or 20 minutes with somebody that's going to write a $250,000 check, which call are you going to take? So making sure that you've done the research so that you're spending your time as wisely as possible, because I think I was just kind of chasing money and opportunities for a little bit there versus focusing on, all right, we're only going to talk to people that have specialize in femtech or famtech or female founders. Because those are kind of our 3 strongest suits right now. And then only people that in those industries that only do seed or pre-seed, and then have the calls to have the chemistry. But I would spend time early doing that research and spend the actual time to do it versus just kind of shotgun approach to raising money.
Yeah. It's so funny because like I invest in women founded companies, right? But beyond that, I don't think of us as like either a femtech or a famtech fund at all. I looked at your company and I was like, this is legal tech for a group that nobody pays attention to.
Yeah.
And that's what I was like, oh, this is like legal tech plus a subscription. And when I think about like my mission and what I want to do, like it's important to me that we want to be a fund that invests in women, but not a stereotypical women's fund. Like we don't invest in people just because you're women. Like we invest in, there's like billions of dollars going into fertility and nobody's touching the other option.
I know.
Right? Like it just felt like such an obvious like gap. And then there's this founder who's like the perfect person to do it, right? And we had chemistry. So it was a very easy one for me.
So how do you, because I feel like I can call you anytime, but how do you, like, do all your founders feel that way? How do you allocate your time across your portfolio?
Yeah, I don't know. And thank you. I'm glad you feel that way. You can call me anytime. And like the worst case scenario is that you're going to get like, it's going to take a minute to hear from me. I invested in your company before our fund was public, right? So like our fund was in stealth mode, which means that you kind of snuck in before the floodgates opened. When we announced the fund in mid-October, the floodgates like flooded me, so now I'm like, oh my God, I don't have time for anything. And so these days we're thinking a lot more about how can we introduce our portfolio founders to the entire Graham & Walker team so that all of us can like flex for you, number one. Number two, how do we introduce our portfolio founders to the Graham & Walker LP base, right? Like our limited partners, the investors in our fund. There's 105 of them, including like, like incredible CEOs, executives, VCs. Like it's a real power base. So I want to start doing these like founder days that are specific to our portfolio companies, so that you can actually get a lot of the things that right now we just do manually, right? Like right now I'm just like, I have an opportunity to post a job for you, and I have 13 portfolio companies, and they're like, everybody is top of mind. And my number one goal in life right now, other than my family and children, is like, I need Erin to be successful, because the more successful you are, the more that we can like snowball this entire system going forward.
Yeah.
And the third thing is like, I mean, for better or worse, I have no boundaries in my life, right? Like I will talk to you anytime. I will talk to you while I'm bathing my children. I will frequently like finish my pipeline meetings while cooking dinner. Like Rory and David know this. This is the stage of life that I'm at. And like, it helps a lot when you actually like the founders that you invest in, so that it feels like fun. Like when I talk to you, it feels fun to me. It doesn't feel like work, and it makes it really easy to take a phone call anytime. I probably wouldn't invest in someone that I don't see myself having that relationship with, because it really is a marriage.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a weird one, because I so much money is put on the like get the money, like so much emphasis is like, just close the deal, get the money in your bank account. And then, but then you realize like, oh, but that's when the marriage actually starts.
Yeah.
You know, because that's when the hard stuff starts. So, okay. So this is one I'm really curious about this is, what do you see when founders are trying to pitch you? What advice do you have in terms of what do you see that them do wrong that you're like, oh, I just wish founders would know to do X before they get on the call with me? Or any other advice you have necessary just for founders in general?
So I think that like there's two separate parts to that answer. One is, what do I wish they did outside of our pitch, right? Because a lot of like whether our pitch is going to be successful or not is, one, your ability to be honest with me, and two, me getting excited about the things that you're being honest about, even if they're not the greatest.
I want to interrupt you for a second, because I remember like in our first meeting, you said, what's the worst thing that happens here? And I was like, oh, wow. Like you went like extreme fast, because I think you wanted to know like, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah. Well, and this one is specifically because we're talking about like placing children in homes. And so we really wanted to like not end up in the front cover of the New York Times for the bad reasons.
For the wrong
Usually ask, you know, more like what is keeping you at night? Like what, you know, I want to be able to get excited about your business, but you have to do it with honesty. And the only way to accomplish those two things simultaneously is to have a substantial business to begin with. And so a lot of the time what I want founders is to like, I feel like I just set this to the 4 founders that I met with, build some velocity into your fundraise. If you're coming in to meet me and pitch me right then and there, I have an active round, have velocity in the numbers around it. Like we have had this many signups, wait lists, kids placed. That was like when I invested in you, 10 kids had been placed in families. I cried that day. I was like, and then the People magazine are, you know, I'm like, this is worth my one life. You know what I mean? Like, so have that velocity coming into the meeting so that you're able to talk about the things that worry you without having to really posture. And like, I react very poorly to people pitching me and trying to give me fear of missing out. That doesn't work for me at all. Like I guess what I would want founders to know is like, even if you have the most amazing company, I met with 20 companies this week and all of them are really, really good. So like their FOMO is not going to work with us. What's really going to work with us is like an incredible, substantial business. And then the final thing, Rory wants us to move to questions from the audience. The final thing I really want people to know is that when I say no, 99% of the time it's not now. Like,
yeah.
Don't take it personally. Don't feel bad about, like, we try to be as kind as possible in our rejections. They are inevitable because of the volume of companies that we're looking at. They are never like forever no. They are always this is not the right time for us. But if you get bitter about it, then it's a forever no, right? Like, you're not coming back from that one.
Well, I'll say, so I send out an investor update every 2 months. And our current investors are on there, but so is every investor that we've ever met with. And so the list is like 220 people now. And I just keep people, because we got a lot of no's. And a no is actually wonderful instead of a like, I don't know, maybe we'll have another meeting. That's the worst. But no's are actually kind because you can move on. And
yeah, the ghosts are the worst.
Yeah, the ghosts are the worst. Yes. Especially when you put some time in on those. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get some questions from the audience. What do y'all want to know about us?
Oh, I'm seeing one. Okay, so across those 62 pitches you did with investors, what was the number one recurring frustration when talking to male investors? Okay, so this was really surprising, and I need to check my own bias at the door, is I was expecting that I was going to get a lot more traction from female investors. Not the case.
Interesting.
Male investors got it just as much as female investors. And that was eye-opening for me, like, whoa, Erin, okay, here you are trying to not be discriminated against, and here you are discriminating against. And so that was really interesting because, well, I mean, in our industry specifically, gay men adopt 4 times more often than female. a lot of, and this was kind of the other piece that I think was, I'm lucky to be in the industry that I'm in, because talking about infertility right off the bat is somewhat disarming. And so it takes that kind of venture capital ego stuff and it brings it down to a very human emotional base layer. And so a lot of men shared stories of their wives and their struggles, or their partners struggling with trying to build a family, because you realize it happens in 1 in 7 families now. So
Yeah.
so I didn't have kind of recurring frustration. I had recurring frustration with people that didn't have any connection to adoption, because they don't know, or that hadn't had any struggle trying to build a family, because they don't know, how all consuming that is for people. So it wasn't necessarily male or female as much as it was just industry experience.
I'm asking this one to you. How do you juggle raising and running the business? What are your tips?
Oh, it's really hard.
Yeah, I'm like, poorly. I handle it poorly.
Yeah, I mean, I am in a incredibly lucky situation where I have in-laws that help, and I have a really supportive husband who also has a full-time job. Leslie was actually the one that told me, and I tell it to myself probably on a weekly basis, because when she was asking me like what my ambition level was, and I was like, I see a world where there's parenting, there's Planned Parenthood, and there's PairTree. But that world means I'm going to have, like, that's a world where I don't get a break. And she's like, stop right there. Who said a $1 billion CEO can't cook dinner? And I was like, okay, that's right. And so for me, it's a daily balance in terms of prioritizing, like, okay, like when I'm with my kids and I have to fight the urge to be on my phone, but I have to like put it away and be present with my kids and my husband. And it just is a daily battle in terms of making those priorities happen. And like walking to the bus stop to pick up my kiddo is my time. I get to actually like get a little bit of exercise, but it's important balance, because I think about PairTree all the time.
No boundaries whatsoever. I'm so glad that I said that. That was a really smart thing to say.
It was smart. Yeah, I played it in my head.
I'm so glad I said that. That's awesome. No, and I mean, really, like when you think about the goal of Graham and Walker, it really is about like creating the world that we want to see. And like, if today running a major company means that you have to be disconnected from your family, then that's probably not a world that we want to see, right? Like that's probably not healthy.
It's not. And I don't know. I think a lot of it is pressure that, and I don't mean to stereotype here either, but I think moms put on themselves to be everything and to do it all. And you can't. And because if you do, you get shingles. I got
You can get a shingle shot. Everybody go get your shingle shot. Okay. Yeah. Leslie, how do you take a resubmission in a few months after saying no? Is it worth the effort for founders to go back to a previous no? Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I would say if I take a meeting and it's a no after the meeting, then I definitely want to be on your investor updates. I'm not the only one. Like I very frequently hear investors who are like, I watched that founder for 2 years before I wrote a check, 5 years before I wrote a check. Like it's sort of like, I mean, you have to write, how do I put this? I just spent 2 years of my life begging for money so that I could invest it in you. Like that's, I literally, like, it matters where that money goes, and it's really hard to invest it without knowing the person. And so like, absolutely, it's worth coming back. Now, I would say if you're coming back, there has to be a reason why you're coming back. And the reason should not be, I'm out of money, right? Like the reason should be not about like, you're about to fail if you don't get more money. It's about like, it generally you want to come back with a growth story, right? Like there's an opportunity right now because we're going to unlock this set of growth, or like something substantial change in the business. So yeah, absolutely, every few months. And the best way to do that is like keep people on your on the investor updates, make them really, really good. I feel like we should do a seminar just on investor updates, Rory, like seriously, because I keep giving that advice to people, and then I have to get into like, what do really good ones look like? This is a great idea. On that
I
note,
thought about this earlier because it was in our tips of like, and add these folks to your investor updates. And I was like, which you should be doing, by the way, and
yeah.
regularly, but we
And I
won't get
think
to
like
that.
3 tip, like off the top of my head, tips for investor updates. Don't do them weekly unless there's a very specific reason why you're doing them weekly. Like you're in a fundraise moment. Like otherwise, weekly is not good. I like monthly. I can go a little less than monthly if appropriate. Quarterly, too slow. 2 months, I'll take. So something along those lines. Number one. Number two, make them short and like snappy. Always add the same KPIs. Like we are focused on this, and this is what's next month, and this is how we perform this month. I love it when founders shout out their thank you, so I know who is helping them and how, right? Like I know that there's velocity around it and like social proof around who is helping you with things. And always add an ask, like I need help with this, and this every single month. Erin, is there anything that you would add to what's worked for you?
Well, I kind of see them as they're also marketing tools. So I just always like your number one customer success or a testimonial or something like that from a customer. Because I think you talking about how great you are is wonderful, but somebody else talking about how great you are, even better. So I'd say I'll add something in there about, so I always have a quote from an adoptive family or from a birth mom or an adoption
You're
professional.
totally right. Like I always end up reading your emails and like, oh my God, I love that I invested in this company. Like it makes me so happy.
Yeah, and that's the point of view that I write them from, is like, okay, like what is Leslie going to read in this that she's going to go to dinner and tell somebody about?
And I do, like every time.
Then it's working.
You're really good, Erin. I should invest in you.
No, but I think, yeah, so we use the same KPIs. And then the other thing is I'm starting to add in just a tiny little bit of like industry information that, hey, you should know. So like in our case right now, it's what's going on with the Supreme Court and Roe v. Wade. Just like a quick, like, this is going to affect our industry.
Yeah.
No matter how this goes. And so I just try to make the investors smarter with a quick, very short, know this.
And it helps establish you as an expert in your industry, which just creates that, especially when you're going into a fundraise versus after the fundraise, you're establishing credibility through showing us what an expert you are. All right, Erin, it's lovely to see you today.
Thank you. Always good to see you guys. I love you.
Thank you for doing this with us.
Yes. Well, I will say too, the one thing I'll say is I'm just always really grateful to the investors because you guys are making this happen for us.
Well, I feel grateful that I get to be a part of it. You do all the work and I get to be a part of it and watch you go. So it's a real privilege.
Ah. I'm over here. I feel like in the chat, there are some really great comments of like, okay, investor founder relationship goals. Thank you both for that conversation and for kind of taking on the interviewing each other style so wonderfully. I feel like you both, just brought really, really wonderful authenticity that helped everybody see what it can be like, right? And I do think that there's a lot to aspire to in the relationship that you two have, and I just loved hearing about it. So thank you both for sharing so much. I think we're going to give Leslie and Erin a round of applause, everybody, virtual round of applause. And thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Erin.